Hello ladies and gentlemen, Spirit of the Law here. It's finally time for a new Civ overview, and this time it's going to be the Saracens. Now you may remember they came up a lot in my market video I did a while back, and I haven't really talked about them on the channel much since then. They're a lot like the Byzantines in terms of their unit variety, and those two civilizations boast the greatest number of available units and techs. They're another camel civilization, like the Indians, which always sets you up for a bit different playstyle. They show up sometimes on lists of the worst civilizations, but I think that's misleading for new players to read, and powerful late game civilizations always seem to be overly picked on in those discussions in favor of flashy feudal rushing civs. As we'll see, they're actually very good at lots of different things, and interestingly are one of the only civilizations whose bonuses have remained completely unchanged since the very first Age of Kings release. Let's check them out. The Saracens are defined as a camel and navy civilization. As always, let's go through their civilization bonuses, starting with their team bonus. Their team bonus is that foot archers gain +1 attack versus buildings. Now, consider the fact that in Castle Age, this makes crossbows and plumed archers do 2 damage to houses instead of 1. In Post-Imperial Age, they do 5 and 4 damage instead of 3 and 2, which makes it seem like it's actually a +2 attack bonus and has been mislabeled. Even with that considered, it still looks like one of the weaker team bonuses in the game, or at least we could say it's a very situational one. Maybe if your allies are Mayans, Britons, or Chinese, then you'll get a bit of use out of it, but archers against buildings is kind of a weird matchup. I guess it helps if you're trying to break down walls with archers, but it would still take an arbalist 50 minutes to shoot through a fortified wall, even with the bonus. Moving on to their civ bonuses now, the first one that usually comes to mind is that the market trade fee is only 5%. Now I've already talked about this in my market video. Considering the normal trade fee is 30% and guilds only reduces it to 15%, you can see how helpful this might be for reshuffling your early economy without all the waste that other civilizations have to put up with. In fact, for Saracens, selling stone for gold instead of collecting gold in the Dark Age turns out to be a better investment. Villagers collecting 200 stone and selling it at the market bring in 16% more gold than 2 villagers collecting gold directly for the same amount of time. If you were to do this with any other civilization, you would only be getting 84% as much gold by mining stone. So normally, this is not to your advantage. Now this doesn't hold forever, since the price of stone drops every time you sell. Because gold is collected about 5 or 6% faster than stone, you'll be helping yourself out more by switching from stone to gold after you've sold 600 of it at the market. There's also an argument that could be made for delaying farming in order to buy food directly from the market. It's faster than farming, and for the Saracens, it saves you a wood investment up front and gives the potential for a decent scout rush a bit quicker. Instead of a few extra lumberjacks to save up wood for farms, you could put them on gold or stone to trade more directly for food. The market's flexibility makes your feudal age behavior harder to anticipate, even if they scout well and see your villager distribution. I think it would be incorrect to say that the Saracens don't have a feudal eco bonus. It's just a bit better disguised than for most other civilizations. I found the market can be very helpful when I'm under feudal pressure, and it's easier to market your way up to Castle Age in that situation than it would be for another civilization. The power spike that knights provide you can get you out of some feudal age jams, and set you up in a position to turn the tables on a player that has been committing to feudal units. The second bonus is that transport ships have double the health, and it says they have double the carry capacity. A more clear way to explain it might be to say that it's +5 transport capacity, since in practice it means that you start with space for 10 instead of 5, and you end with space for 25 instead of 20. The health point bonus is nice, and I guess if you plan to use a transport ship, it could help keep your units a bit more safe. The third bonus is that their galleys attack 20% faster. This is another one of those cases where it's actually 25% faster, as we can see the Saracens get 5 shots in the time that it takes the other galleys to get 4. This gives them enough of a boost that they can defeat the Viking longboat equivalent to the galley line. While a Viking player might get a 20% bigger navy in the late game for the same resources, which is going to be more helpful in open water when you can get all the ships firing, it sometimes works out that you won't be able to get them all firing in a more closed space. in which case having units firing faster can end up being more cost effective than a greater number of cheaper ships. Someone unfamiliar with the Saracens' galley bonus might not even notice something was up until it was too late. The last civ bonus is that cavalry archers get +3 damage versus buildings, although actually it turns out it's +4. This makes Saracen cavalry archers surprisingly good against camps and farms, so they do 11 damage against farms instead of 7. A group of 11 Castle Age cavalry archers can therefore take out a farm in 4 shots instead of 6. A group of 8 can also take out a mining camp easily in about a minute. Alright, so those are the Saracens bonuses. It's a bit of a mixed bag with the market, navy, and the archer stuff happening there. Moving on now, we'll take a look at their unique unit, the Mamluk. First of all, they're very expensive, at 55 food and 85 gold. That makes them more expensive in gold than a paladin, ram, scorpion, camel, cavalry archer, conquistador, war elephant, mangadai, war wagon, elephant archer, boyar, and cataphract. The only units costing more gold are the mangonel line, cannon galleon, trebuchet, and bombard cannon. They end up winning against knights when everyone is in the Castle Age, and elite Mamluks beat paladins after you research their unique tech. Just in case you're wondering too, the camels beat knights in Castle Age with 20 health points left over, and the post-imperial heavy camel beats a paladin with 20 health points left over without the unique tech, and with the unique tech it's 50 health points left over. The Mamluk are a little strange in that they have a melee attack, but with range, so similar to the throwing axeman, and the Teutonic Knight only takes 1 damage per shot. The Mamluks are also affected by bloodlines and husbandry, as well as cavalry armor upgrades and cavalry attack upgrades, and their range can't be increased at the blacksmith or anywhere else. It's always going to be 3. In general, they're weak to anything that's good against cavalry archers. They take bonus damage from anti-cavalry units like pikes, although it's only half of what horse units do. And they take bonus damage from anti-archer units, making the skirmisher a viable counter. They take bonus damage from samurai and huskarls, who do an anti-archer bonus damage. And they take extra damage from towers and castles because, of course, they're also camels. That's a big variety of units that counter them, although a lot of those can be stopped if you have enough Mamelukes. Like most units, they can be taken down by archers, especially the plumed archer and the longbowman, and are cost-effectively countered by skirmishers, cataphracts, and onagers to a degree. The short line of sight also makes it easy for them to fall into traps, where they can die to castles or pikes. They do have some strengths though, and they can do well against rams and knights, and surprisingly war elephants, especially if they're in a corner. The Saracen unique tech is Zealotry. This tech adds 30% health points to Mamluks and camels. It's a very costly upgrade at 750 food and 800 gold, which is about the cost of 10 Mamelukes worth of gold, but they're really a whole lot scarier at 130 health than they are at 100. Considering the fact that you won't be going for the paladin upgrade, it makes sense to invest the save resources from that into your camels. Looking now at the Forgotten Empire's changes, the base Mamluk unit has been given a +1 attack upgrade, which is a slight boost to their Castle Age power. The cost to build their market has also been reduced by 75 wood, which is really cool and helps guide people toward using the market in the early game as their eco bonus. Even in a 1 vs 1 game, I would be expecting a Saracen player to lay down a market in Feudal Age for the eco options that it gives you, whether it be military or advancing quickly, regardless of any small harassment I might be dealing with. The new technology introduced in the Forgotten Empires is that the monks can return 33% of their cost. So basically, after they die, they only cost you 67 gold in the long run. But remember, you still need the 100 gold up front, and I'm also not keen to pay 200 food and 100 gold for it, especially after having to build a castle. It's okay if you're going for monks in the late game, and it pays back the gold after only 3 monks, so maybe if you're doing the famous Saracen monk rush, this can help you, but I just don't see having a castle up while doing that. It's a nice idea, and it seems like homage to that well-known outside-the-box strategy, but I think getting the castle to research the tech is more of a hurdle than a help when you're doing the strategy. Just to touch briefly on the Saracen monk rush, it involves very quickly reaching Feudal Age with around 20 villagers, aiming for less than 10 minutes, and often while gathering a bit of stone and using the market to sell your stone, ignoring all the upgrades, getting no military units, and reaching castle around 14 minutes, throwing down a couple of monasteries and trying to send monks to your opponent, obviously as quickly as possible. I can't emphasize that enough. The point is just to slam them with monks and steal their units before they know what's happening, and then follow it up by converting buildings and sending in siege. It's a bit of a dangerous strategy, and you're out of luck if they happen to go for scouts or if they rush you, but it's pretty famous, so I thought I'd just mention it. Looking at their tech tree now, the Saracen archery range doesn't get a whole lot of accolades, but they get all the archery units and techs. Combined with a +3 damage for cavalry archers against buildings that I think is actually +4, it's a solid A- for me. I just don't see a lot of useful bonuses for the more common archery range units, and I never think of them as a top archer civilization, but maybe I should. Looking now at infantry, it's a little sad they don't get the halberdier, but to be fair, their camels can play the anti-cavalry role. They don't have any civ bonuses, but they do get all the blacksmith techs and champions, so it's a middle of the pack B- for me. Looking at the cavalry now, we can see there is no cavalier. The Indians are the only similar civilization in this regard, although unlike the Indians, Saracens can at least do a night rush, and they actually get good knights in the Castle Age. I would say a night rush is definitely a possibility for a pocket player as the Saracens. Combine that with the fact that they also arguably get the best camels in the game in the Imperial Age, and things are looking solid. I have to keep it to a B+ though, because the camels aren't really a replacement for the top knight line. They're a nice cost-effective counter to cavalry, but they don't have the raiding potential of cavalry. So while you have a few options, they're not a top cavalry civilization. Looking at the siege now, they have everything except heavy scorpions, and they're only one of 7 civilizations with access to the very powerful siege onager. This is definitely a strength of the civilization, even if they don't have a siege bonus per se, so I'll give them a B+. They're not in the same conversation as Celts, but the options are impressive. Moving on to the navy now, we saw their fast attacking galleys can beat an equally costing Viking galley army under the right circumstances. If we're looking at it in terms of galley rush potential, then the Vikings are definitely better. For the average HD player though, where the game usually does make it into the Imperial Age on a water map, the Saracens are arguably right up there at the top. Overall, I'd give them a C+ for the navy in the early game and an A- in the late game, so rounding out to a nice B. Moving on to the monks, the Forgotten Age technology is intriguing to me, and they do have all the technologies. They're also famous for their monk rush, so I'd give their monastery an A. Looking at defenses now, they're missing a couple of university techs, and I'd consider the lack of halberdier a knock on their defensive potential, because it's a nice cheap counter to cavalry. Their sheer number of options though allow them to hang on even while they're on the back foot, and as I mentioned before, the market can be an asset in maintaining your momentum while under pressure. Ultimately, my impression is that they're a solid B defensively. They're described as an aggressive civ sometimes because of their good siege, but siege can just as easily help you in a defensive role as well, especially if you can deter cavalry raids with your camels. Their economy is much harder to grade. On the surface, they don't seem to have an eco bonus, but obviously if you dig deeper, the market bonus can definitely impact and greatly improve your economy at any point in the game. Missing crop rotation is notable in the long drawn-out games, and assuming that you're making use of their market bonus with purpose, I'd give them overall a B for economy. Although they're not usually a go-to for most civilizations, cavalry archers are considered a solid choice for Saracens because of the bonuses versus buildings that they get, and the market bonus. If you have painful memories of getting stomped by Saracens, it was more likely in the late game though, with Mamluks and siege onagers. There just isn't an obvious good unit counter to that, and the Saracens also have a wide variety of other units if you manage to think of something. You can't really use cavalry because of the camel bonuses, and you can't use archers because of the onagers, and you can't use infantry because of the onagers, and sort of the mamelukes as well, that are pretty good at taking them out. It's quite expensive for the Saracen player to get those units out and upgraded, but they're a really solid answer to the tried and true siege and trash army. Fighting against siege is probably where they'll struggle the most, especially against bombard cannons, but even then, they do have the hussar available. Generally, Saracens are not considered a top tier 1 vs 1 because they're usually a bit behind some quicker civilizations until the Castle Age. They're a classic jack-of-all-trades civilization, and they have the common options available, including a night rush, but there's always a few civilizations that do every tactic better, except perhaps arguably the monk rush. That means paradoxically, despite history, they don't actually thrive on the Arabia map, which seems kind of weird. The market can help execute a particular strategy, but remember that you're losing your combined resource value in every exchange. It's reshuffling your resources at a slight loss in value, and given the fact that you can overuse it to give yourself a net loss and weaken your economy, it's not a direct eco bonus like faster woodcutting or something like that. Just to give one example, selling your stone is a great deal early on, but if you just sold it to get up to the castle age faster, you may hit castle without enough stone to build any more town centers, and end up selling other resources to buy back stone, which you just sold. This is when the allure of the market can be working against you and give you less to play with than your opponent has. That's just something to think about. So that's all for this one. Take it easy, guys, and I'll see you next time.